Good evening and welcome to Hands Off. My name is Rhett Hackett and I am your host. We're continuing our series on breaking code silence and WASP, and I have an amazing guest here tonight. Her name is Kristi Hayes. And Kristi, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I appreciate you wanting to, tell your story and help us to uncover some of the things in regards to the troubled teen industry. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Rhett.
Absolutely. So I know I said your name and all, but let's start off and just ask you to introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, the school that you went to, and I say this every time, I have a hard time calling it a school, and the number of years that you were there, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so my name is Kristi. I live in Washington State now, but I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, California, and I was sent to Red Cliff Ascent, a wilderness program in St. George, Utah, for a few months, roughly 2 to 3 months. And then afterwards, I was sent to the Family Foundation School, where I stayed, I'm not sure the exact time, a month or two before I escaped, and I was able to run and get away from there.
Wow. So first, let me just start off by saying bravo to you, and I admire your courage. I also know, too, that the wilderness programs are, just from doing these interviews and speaking to people, just absolutely horrible. But can you tell us your story and, just give us like a brief summary of what it was like, and then obviously, most important is the escape factor. I'm fascinated.
Okay, so I was first in the wilderness program, and obviously that was a lot of hiking and no showers, and if you wanted to eat, you had to start your own fire with 2 sticks of wood. They called it busting a coal, so you would have to bust a coal if you wanted to eat dinner that night or breakfast that morning. Many kids struggled with that. And the wilderness program was definitely an experience in and of itself. It's not something I'd ever send my own kids to. But the one I actually was sent to, it's still open today. It's in St. George, Utah, Red Cliff Ascent. So.
And is it under the same name?
Under the same name, yes.
God, that's fascinating.
And I was there in '96, so that's, over 20 years later.
Wow,
it's still
amazing.
open. They did try to open one in Bend, Oregon called Sage Walk, but unfortunately a child died there and that program was shut down by the state of Oregon, thankfully.
So all right, so you're there for a few months and then they transfer you and you go somewhere else. And I'm sorry, what was the name of that school?
I went to the Family Foundation School. It was located outside of Hancock, New York.
Okay.
So it was in New York State.
Wow. Okay.
And that school was incredibly abusive, like a million times worse than the wilderness program.
Wow.
The wilderness programs weren't great, obviously, and were abusive in their own way. But the psychological warfare and brainwashing that happened at Family Foundation School was just incredibly traumatic for many kids.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there have been a lot of DCYS reports going back to the 80s and CPS reports and a lot of lawsuits against the Family Foundation School. And then there was the Family Foundation School Truth Campaign. So finally, the Foundation School was shut down in 2009. So.
All right. Well, there you go. That's a positive. But tell us how you got out.
So because I had been in the wilderness program and I had the skills to survive in the woods, I had planned it out and I wore triple layers of clothes and I basically waited for an exit plan. They were lining everybody up to shave everybody's heads. They said it was my fault because I had come from wilderness and I had brought lice and that they were going to have to shave everybody in the school's heads because of me, because I was so dirty and gross. And so, of course, all the students there were really upset with me as well. And so when they lined us up, when I came into the trailer door, I had took a shoe and shoved it in the door. There was alarms for the doors. So when my shadow, and that's like a peer that is tasked to watch you 24/7, When she was otherwise occupied, I ran out. I ran out the door and I just kept running for the hills. And I ran for a couple days. I was out there in the woods. I just beelined the river, the Delaware River. And thankfully, finally, after I had ran, I found a post office that had a payphone. So I ran to the payphone and I tried to use the payphone. Unfortunately, I picked up the payphone and it wasn't working. So that was like, oh my goodness. But there was a general store right next door to the post office. So I went in the general store and I asked the woman behind the counter if I could use her phone. And she asked me, "Are you from the Family Foundation School?" And, of course, my heart drops because I knew everybody in the town was told, or in the nearby vicinities, that they're small towns. So if you see teenagers you don't know, they're going to call the police and they're going to bring you back. Thankfully, I had a feeling about this woman and I trusted her. And I told her yes, and she told me she knew that school was incredibly abusive, and all the townspeople knew that. And so she actually had a house that was attached to the back of the store, and she hid me in the back of the house while my parents and I arranged transport out of New York State to get out of, because my parents had signed over custody to the Family Foundation School. So, of course, they were worried about me getting sent back there.
Wow, this is absolutely incredible. First of all, as you're telling the story, my heart is racing. And as you got to the part about the lady in the store and her house and all the hair went up on every part of my body. So that is amazing. She probably saved your life. Whose idea was it to send you to any of these schools?
So it was actually my parents had contacted an education consultant.
Okay.
Of course, again.
Yeah.
I was smoking a little bit of marijuana and, doing the normal teenage things. But the difference with my story is I had actually graduated high school already. I graduated high school early in January of that year. And I was sent in February. I turned 18 in July. So because of that, that's why I had gone to the Family Foundation School, because I was supposed to stay there until I was 21 and go to Binghamton College.
Holy mackerel! Yeah, I know that college and just that town, and this is incredible. So you were going to be there for 3 years?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
man.
And my parents had prepaid tuition as well, and they didn't get any of their money back.
Oh well, I mean. In retrospect now, and just through my own fact finding, and it was a total money scam, 100%.
Yes.
And that just validates it even more so. So when you called your parents, what did you say that made them believe? Because I know that there's a brainwashing factor to this, to the parents, as well as saying, they train the parents to think that if their child tells them these things that they're manipulating to get out. What made that work?
So there were several factors that went into it. When I went into wilderness, there had been a lot of stories on 2020 about where kids dying in wilderness programs. So when I went into the wilderness program, my parents had given me a code word. That code word was green lizards. So if anything bad happened, I was to write that code word in my letters. I never used that code word. The whole time I was at wilderness, I never used that code word. That probably really helped save me from what happened later on. And then on top of that, when I ran, I wasn't really a kid that would run from things. I was more of a rule follower. So me running, and the school never contacted my parents. They first got the phone call from me that I had ran and escaped. And granted, I had already been gone from the school for over 2 days now, because I slept in the woods a couple nights.
Wow.
So, barefoot, bloody, I was in the woods. And my parents were never notified, and my mom was livid. And she later said that she had a feeling something was bad at the school, because when we showed up there, they drove me from, LaGuardia Airport, and my mom asked for a tour of the school, and they told her no. And she said she had always kind of had a bad feeling about that place. I'd gone to a lot of college preparatory private schools. And of course, normal boarding private schools, you go to the campus, you get a tour of the campus, they have parents' nights.
Sure.
This was obviously not a normal boarding school.
Yeah. And so, looking back, I mean, would you really classify yourself as a troubled teen, or were you just a teen that was getting into trouble?
No, I was just a teen that was getting into trouble.
Yeah, that's kind of been my take on it, and quite honestly, regardless of whether that is the case or not, there certainly are other ways of dealing with that. And so what time of year was it that you were running through the woods of upstate New York?
It must have been, I went to Wilderness in February, March. It must have been April or May.
Okay.
It wasn't winter though.
Okay. Well, that's a good
There was
thing
no
right there.
snow. I remember that.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that you didn't eat, or maybe you stored some food or whatever,
No,
but
I had no food. We weren't allowed to store food at the Family Foundation School. You were only allowed to eat at dinner time.
Okay.
And I was on tuna can restriction anyway, so I didn't really get much food.
Oh Lord. So really, you just had the clothes on your back, whether it's double layer or not. That's all you had. Like, it's not like you had shelter.
Yeah, and no shoes because I had put my shoe in the trailer door.
Right.
So, but I honestly, I didn't even notice it because my heart was racing so much.
Oh, the adrenaline level.
Yeah, you're running for your life. It's like your adrenaline's beating and you're just running because you know if you don't get out, you're gonna die. And I knew, like, I would die if I didn't make it out of there.
What? I know I'm kind of like jumping all over the place, but I'm just captivated by this. What was the tipping point for you to say, like, when did you know I've got to get out of here because my life is going to be in danger? It certainly wasn't the head shaving. It would have been before that. Like, what do you, like, was it seeing others being abused?
So I had my first panic attack there because they had put me on silence. I wasn't allowed to speak to anybody. I had a shadow. And I had a panic attack and I was on the ground struggling to breathe, and they had my family surrounded me, and the head of our quote family had all my whole family surround me, and they were hitting and kicking me while saying Hail Marys over and over again to exorcise the demons out of me, because the panic attack must have been caused by demons. And I realized at that point, and then I was also wrapped in a blanket, like a rug with duct tape and a few other things. But I realized I'm not going to make it out of here emotionally, mentally. I either need to put myself in the hospital and get hurt bad enough that I go to the hospital so they have to contact my parents, or I'm going to kill myself. Like, there's or I need to escape. So I knew it was a life or death situation. And I don't think I could have emotionally made it through that if I hadn't successfully escaped.
Yeah. And did you know that general store was there, or did you just come upon it?
No idea. I came upon it. I had beelined the Delaware River. In fact, so when we had come in, they first told my parents that the kids always run to Hancock, and that all the families there and the people there will call the police if they see a teenager. So if I was to try to run, don't worry, I would get caught.
Wow.
So when I ran the opposite direction. I ran towards Long Eddy, and I just beelined the Delaware River as long as I could. And when I was just finally, when I came up to the road, there was only one road,
Sure.
that I hit. It wasn't a very busy road. It was out in the middle of nowhere. It was a small town.
Oh yeah.
Probably under 1,000 people.
Wow.
So it was pure luck that general store happened to be right next to the post office that had the broke down payphone.
That's amazing.
And that the lady happened to help me, and she actually drove me to the Binghamton airport, kept me in her home for 2 days, and talked to my parents, told them as well how abusive the school was, told us some stories about the school and other students that were there. So it was definitely, she helped me out a
Incredible.
lot. Drove me 3 hours to
Incredible.
the airport. So.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I always want to talk about like what does life look like now, but I just have a couple quick questions when we come back, more on your story, and then we'll get into that too. So just take a quick break, and we'll be right back, and we'll get more of this story. So thank you.
Thanks.
Plus this equals this, plus this and this. Don't drink and drive.
Listen, what will make your event simply beautiful? Is it your attire, your decorations, your entertainment? Well, join me, Alicia Simone, as I chat with some amazing vendors and clientele who will share their stories and images and their experiences. Right here on RVN TV, Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. and Wednesday at 4 p.m. It will be simply beautiful. See you then.
Welcome back to Hands Off with my guest Kristi Hayes and her shocking, captivating story. There's not enough adjectives. Before we went to break, we talked a little bit about the general store running in the opposite direction. But I wanted to ask, do you know whether the school ever contacted the lady that was this store manager or whatever?
Not that I know of. I don't know. I actually lost contact with that lady. I had her number. I've recently tried to find her, and it's not been able to. But I imagine she put herself in great risk because that was a very small town, and everybody knew everybody. And the Aguirre's family that owned the Family Foundation School lives in that community still. So.
Oh man, you're kidding me! Wow, that is just like. It's there. I have chills again. That's crazy that these. Wow. Okay. Was she old, or was she like middle aged or young? Or?
She was probably the age I am now. She had 3 kids in her home.
Okay.
She had a daughter that was about my age, like a year or two, a couple years younger than I was at the time. So her daughter must have been 15.
Sure.
14, 15. And then she had some little ones as well.
It's amazing to me. And I'm sorry if I'm asking you to repeat this, but how many days were you there at her house or whatever?
Like 2-3 days.
God, that's
until
great.
we could make travel arrangements, because actually when we tried to call my parents, I couldn't get a hold of them.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually out of town, and so it was a whole issue trying to get a hold of them and then to make travel arrangements out. My parents actually got a hold of the wilderness program and said, what happened? The school is terrible. How could you recommend this? And the wilderness, I was sent back to Utah, and the wilderness program arranged foster care for me, where I was placed in foster care until shortly before my 18th birthday.
Oh my goodness. Were you scared to death to even go back to the wilderness program?
At the time, I wasn't. Like, it's so terrible now because I look back on it from a parent's perspective. But as a kid, I was so brainwashed. I thought the wilderness program saved my life. I thought it was like the best thing that ever happened to me. And I liked hiking and I liked the woods. like some of the things getting tied to another student of the opposite sex for a week. Like I didn't realize how wrong that was until I had kids of my own. And I started, because I just trusted all the adults around me.
Sure. Well, that's
they were doing what was in my best interest, but it wasn't.
Yeah. So let's talk about what kind of effects if any, do you see now as an adult that are as a result of that whole experience?
I have terrible anxiety, like crippling anxiety and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So, that's something that I've had to overcome in my own life and seek treatment and therapy for that, and just work on myself.
Sure. And because you mentioned that you have children, but what does life look like for you today? What's it look like? What do you do?
I have a wonderful husband who I love dearly and 3 amazing kids. And I'm happy now that I have a family of my own to love and family that loves me back. Yeah,
it's absolutely incredible. And how old are your children now?
I have a 22-year-old and an 11-year-old, almost 12, and a 5-year-old.
Okay, so those that are of the correct age, whether the 11 or the 22-year-old, are they familiar with this story before all of this? Like, no. Okay. No, not my 11-year-old. He's not really mature enough. My 22-year-old, he knows. Okay. And was this something that, like, for example, when you met your husband and all that, like, did you tell him at any time, or did this all come to the surface as breaking code silence and everything was unfolding?
Oh no, so I've been a part of, long before Breaking Code Silence came out, there have been different names for the movement, but as soon as I escaped from the Family Foundation School, even when I was in the foster home in Utah, I was writing letters to the President of the United States and calling the FBI and trying to notify people that something terrible was going on in New York, because I thought there must be some mistake. Like, nobody could know, because if people knew, there's no way this could actually go on.
Good for you.
So I tried for a few years by myself, unsuccessfully. And so, no, my husband, he knew, but I've always kind of acted like, oh, it wasn't a big deal, just one more notch in the craziness I call my life, because my life's been a little unconventional. So
yeah. I mean, we tend to do that, to dismiss, the things that took place, and then as time goes on, we see more of the impact. And as you said, when you had children, that's really like when you kind of see, like, just the magnitude. What do you think? Like, where does your tenacity come from? I have to ask, because, like, there's no doubt that there's something in you that is, and I know we said the wilderness program and all, but there's something in you in regards to survival. Where do you think it comes from, and what got you through? I mean, these are rough things, and I know that you were almost 18, but I mean, gosh, there's not too many people in this world that know anything at 18. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm realizing that now. I think I just barreled through it at the time, because that was sort of how I was raised, to not talk about anything negative or traumatic or abusive. And I did have, there was some abuse in my childhood as well. And I was a pretty strong-willed and stubborn person, and I try to see the bright side of life and focus on the positive, even despite whatever may have happened. Like, no matter how bad the bads are, there are still a lot of good in life as well. So focus on the positive.
Yeah. I mean, that's a special quality that many, as I'm sure you know, because we're both part of the same groups, you see and you hear some of the stories and how people are today. They're clearly not in the position that you are in. And, you know, because we all process pain very differently. But I have to believe that, you know, when you were out there running for your life and, you know, spending those nights out there, that you were saying to yourself, okay, I can do this, and, you know, I'm going to get through this. Is that a true statement, or was there a time where you were thinking maybe you're not going to
I knew I couldn't get caught. I just knew I couldn't. So, and I used to run cross country, and I did a lot of sports. So it's kind of like when you're running a race, you know, you can run 15, 20 miles. It's all in the head. It's, you know, I used to say it's 99% mental and 1% physical. If you just keep telling yourself, like, I can do this, like, I have to do this, like, I don't have another choice. So I just kept pushing myself.
It's just, yeah, it really is impressive to me, because it just shows that, you know, when you can do something when you really need to do it. And I want to ask why, and I mean, I kind of know the answer, but why did you want to speak out now? I mean, I know that you were, like, you know, that you wrote letters and all that kind of stuff, but like, you've done other speaking things, and, you know, what is it that motivates you to do that?
Just thinking that the fact that there's other kids still in these programs today, it's heartbreaking, and it makes it hard to sleep at night knowing that there are other kids going through this. And I don't feel like I'll be able to rest easy until every kid is free from these horrors and atrocities, because no child should have to go through what I went through. And it's heartbreaking to think about my kids going through something like that, which they would never, you know, I would never put them in a program, but somebody needs to speak for these kids who don't have anybody to speak for them.
Absolutely. You are my kind of person, tough and compassionate. Those are two qualities that get things done and get things changed or whatever. So, you know, as we're nearing the end, there's a couple things. One is, what would you say to somebody that is either A, struggling because they experienced something that you know, similar to yours, or what would you say to parents that, you know, are either have a child in the program or they're considering that? I mean, you're free to answer any one of those two questions right there.
Well, if you're a parent with a child in the program, I would say to reassess that question and do some research. The internet is right at your fingertips, and all these survivors, we have no reason to be telling our stories, except it's a great pain to ourselves. It doesn't make us look better. It's embarrassing, you know, if anything, to ourselves and what we have gained in life. I would say pull your kids and find another solution. There are so many other solutions. There's wraparound services. There so many more solutions than having your kids be tortured and brainwashed so that they will be who you want them to be.
I could not agree more. I'm so with you, and wow, just you know, thank you. I have such respect for you, for, you know, wanting to speak out and to you know, to create some sort of change. If there's ever a doubt in your mind whether you're doing the right thing, which I can't even imagine that would be the case, but by no means. And you might not know all the people that you're helping, but believe me, every single time and every single word that you speak, you are making a difference, whether you know it or not. And I can't thank you enough. And in support of everything that you have said this evening, if you are a parent and you are considering this, or it is happening right now, my goodness, first of all, never sign over your rights to your child. They need you, and definitely reconsider. Kristi, we're at the end. Thank you so much. Your story gets me, and because I get it, and I really appreciate it, and thank goodness that you made it. That's all I can say.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That is our show, and what a powerful episode. So tune in again, and we'll continue as we move through this series of Breaking Code Silence. And have a good night.